Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Mobility Symposium. My name is Cheryl Gardner. I am one of the Dell account representatives representing public sector in Northern California. So quick poll, whose state? City, county? Any higher education? Okay. Well, thank you again. Thank you for coming this morning. I don't know if you realize these sessions today are broken up in tracks. This track is a security track, and so we're kicking off your day. Hopefully you've had coffee and are awake, all that good stuff. Our presenter today is Jason Moody from Dell. He's from our enterprise, our end user computing group within Dell, and he's here to talk about BYOD and two easy steps to secure your device. How many of you do BYOD, bring your own device? I'm sort of not so much in the state yet, right? We'll let Jason take it away. We like to have these sessions be very interactive, so ask lots of questions. Afterwards, if you'd like some additional information or see demos of anything that Dell offers in terms of mobility management, our table is right outside the door here. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, let me see if this mic works. Okay, good. Thank you all for showing up today. This is great. My name is Jason Moody. I flew in from Austin yesterday. You guys have a beautiful city, so thank you very much for the invite. So this presentation is one that I give to a lot of different groups, and I like it to be very interactive because I really want to understand what you guys are looking for. There's a ton of statistics about what's going on when it comes to mobility, mobile, BYO. The BYO world is being changed from a BYOD to a BYO everything. So we're seeing a lot of that happening today. And so what you're going to see with some of this stuff is some of it's business-centric, some of it is state-centric, some of it's government-centric. So, you know, take bits and pieces and please ask as many questions as come up, okay? There's going to be acronyms as well. I'll define those acronyms as we go. I used to work for a carrier, and in the carrier world, when the first day they give you a book about this thick of acronyms. So then you get a test, and that's always fun. So this stuff is kind of interesting because most people have a smartphone. So what you'll see up here is basically BYOD is a gigantic trend. We've all seen this. The smartphones account for 80% of the phones that are being sold today. So it's really where most things are going, and most people see people with a smartphone today. There's a huge data explosion, and so from the carrier standpoint, there's been a big flip. It used to be they would sell you on the voice, and you pick your voice plan, and then the data just came along with it. That completely flipped, and now they just give away the voice and the text messaging, and they make you pay for the data pieces. So things have really flipped on and from a long-term standpoint, that's what you're going to see. So you're really going to see the fact that people are taking advantage of data applications. And long-term, that's where most everything is going to move to. There's a lot of productivity that we get out of mobility. So it depends on who I'm talking to. Some people hate the statistics, some people like it, but the bottom right, 460 extra hours worked per year because people have a mobile device. I see heads shaking, I know people going. So this is one of the things that happens with when giving people access to things. There's something called a perfect storm, which is essentially devices, networks, and applications all coming together in one. So you see a lot of people grabbing these devices. They then have access to things, and they're using applications. So 95 billion applications will be downloaded by the end of 2015. I think it's about 98 billion now, but let's say 95 billion. These applications generally request access to calendar, contacts, GPS, the device ID. So they request a lot of different information from users. Most users go on ahead and say yes. I'll pull the mic closer. Most users tend to say yes because they don't know, they don't really understand all that's going on when it comes to personal data being accessed from this information, okay? Some of these applications are good, some of these applications are bad. You'll hear a lot of people talk about the fact that there's applications out there that tend to request more access and do potentially harmful things. And I'm going to talk about ways to prevent that. It's very difficult to prevent end users from downloading applications that they want. I'll just say that to start on the BYOD, on their personal devices. On state-owned devices, institutionally owned devices, it's much easier because we're controlling that whole device, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Okay? So 2 ways to do it. We're going to allow people to, obviously, they're going to have their devices with them. They bring them in. They tend to put them on the desk. Who here allows them to plug their cable into your computer and then charge their phone during the day? All right. So this is a gigantic hard drive. This is 100 gigs worth of hard drive space that I can plug into my Dell laptop and just siphon data off all the time. So it's one of those things that provides a huge security issue. So the first thing we want to do when we talk about BYO, when we talk about, we tried to make this as easy as possible, essentially 2 steps to get to look at mobility and BYO. You want to understand your user base. I always, when talking to customers, I try and get a sense of what their user base is like, what they're doing, what type of assessment I can do on their user base to understand what's going on, their user behavior, as well as something called asset discovery. So what kind of devices are they using? It used to be a couple years ago that it was much easier because we had pretty distinct group. We had people with laptops and we had people with smartphones. That's kind of changed over now. We have people with laptops, we have people with tablets, we have people with smartphones. A lot of times we have people with 2 smartphones. We have their personal smartphone and we also have the state smartphone that they gave them. How many people issue state-issued smartphones or institutionally issued smartphones? Okay. Your users tend to have 2 devices at this point? 2 smartphone devices? Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of devices out there that are on the desk that have access to different pieces of things. So I want to understand what's going on with that. And then look at the people, the process, and the technology that can come together that can provide some type of solution for this. And again, there's multiple ways to do it, and we'll talk through that. So within the workforce, there's differing needs. When we talk to workforce groups, we talk to end users, we talk to line of business owners or department owners, and then we also talk to IT decision makers. The other 2 groups that I always try and pull in are HR and legal. Especially here in California, it's very important to understand what's going on from a legal standpoint and what's going on from an HR standpoint when it comes to recruiting new employees, as well as meeting the demands and the current law and current structure. So once I understand that, I'm able to look at what end users will adopt. And one of the biggest things, and again, 2 ways to do this, we can do something called mobile device management or MDM, where we put an application or an agent on the device and we can remotely manage the device. Okay? The other way of doing it, and you're going to hear a lot more about this, is something called Workspaces. So Workspace is an application where you put all of the institutionally owned data inside that workspace running on the BYO or the smartphone or the tablet or the PC. Okay? So 2 ways to do it. You can manage the entire thing or you can just manage the workspace. We think a lot of people are going to migrate toward managing the workspaces. The reason is you're going to have device manufacturers continuously update operating systems. iOS users? Any iOS users? Okay. Android users? Couple? Good. Oh, wow. Good. BlackBerry? All right. Hey, it's still like our keyboard. Come on. So within that kind of world, what you're seeing, and Windows, any Windows Phone users? Right here? All right. What's going to happen is these manufacturers are continuously upgrading their operating systems. What can happen is that it can break the current applications that people download on their devices. So then the applications guys, yes, you had a question? Are your workspaces the same as a partition? Similar to a partition. But not the same. But it can be defined a little bit differently. Yeah. So the applications can break when people upgrade the operating system. The difference between partitioning something and actually putting a workspace on it, on a mobile device, what we're doing is just running a secure application. And that secure application, you're going to hear other vendors talk about this a lot. I think this is really the wave of the future. It essentially, what it does for you is it gives you an encrypted, secured container where I'm not having to partition or mess with someone's BYO device, and I'm giving that application the ability to access institutional, state, corporate information. And so if I have to go and do anything to it, I'm never touching the employee's device. We're also seeing people do this on corporately owned, state-owned, institutionally owned, department-owned devices as well, where I put this secure container on there, and then I'm running all my secure information through that. Because sometimes, a lot of times, they don't trust applications, okay? One of the most downloaded applications for Android was a flashlight. That flashlight looked at your calendar, and whenever you were in an event, it turned on the voice recorder and actually recorded the conversations, okay? So this is why we don't want it seeing the state information, okay? Went the wrong way. It's not my normal keyboard. Sorry, I'm using someone else's laptop. So department owners, there's this thing called shadow IT. So if I need to get a project done and IT has a block on me setting up some type of SharePoint, cloud storage, something like that, the easiest thing for me to do is go to Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud, and set up a share and then start sharing documents back and forth. This is called shadow IT. This is what happens when people go around the process because the process tends to block people in trying to get their jobs done. We want to limit that as much as possible because this is not a good way of going. What ends up happening is once that breaks, and me, let's say I'm an end user and I go create this thing, once I break it, I don't know how to fix it. So I'm going to call IT and say, hey guys, I created this thing and I need you guys to come fix it. And they're like, had no idea you did this. Thanks for the heads up and great. Anybody have this experience? All right. So we have this a lot. This is, goes against corporate policy at Dell and most every company I've ever worked at. Problem is people don't always follow it. Okay. So what we're trying to do is also give people the capability to share things because collaboration is going to be one of the #1 things that you're going to see across everything. If you see most of the applications today that are being built that are going for the most amount of money for these social media groups are around collaboration. Okay. And then IT decision makers, there's huge threats going on today. You guys probably hear it in the news all the time with a lot of the credit card stuff, identity theft, a lot of the fraud that's going on. This is because it's pretty easy to put an application again on a phone and start siphoning off data. It's also easy to allow, when I grab a new device, it says, hey, do you want to go on ahead and join our cloud storage and start storing all your data up there? Yeah, no problem at all. Switch, hit yes, next, done. You want to join your social media, turn on your Facebook? Yes, turn that on. A lot of times people have their state information, departmental information, contacts on in their contacts database. That then gets uploaded to Facebook. 40% of CIOs in last year's survey thought that most of their or all of their contacts will be up on Facebook within the next year. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of that stuff happening as well. The social media, the contacts database that we have living on our devices just merged with all the social media stuff. Okay, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that, they're putting those relationships together. LinkedIn is another one that puts those relationships together and knows who and what. Sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes it does matter. And so being able to control that and own that will give you a little bit more of a peace of mind. Okay. So commingling personal and business is a huge deal. There's also data loss, which is happening a lot. So something called DLP, data loss prevention, which when we're talking about the partition versus the Workspace application, if I have a Workspace application and I put all of my information in that Workspace application, I then have the capability to prevent loss. So I can manage other applications talking to that application. I don't want them talking to that application. I don't want them requesting anything or being able to see anything or anything like that. So I want to manage that out. And you can do that now on BYO devices with this new concept called Workspace. So I always talk about kind of 4 main things that you have to do BYO, and honestly it's 4 main things that you have to do anything within kind of future computing. You have to have the capability to manage things. You have to have infrastructure, you have to have applications, and then within that is security. So the easiest, and this is where a lot of people talk about MDM or mobile device management in the mobile world. So management gives you the capability to manage that device. I put an agent on that device or an application. That application talks back to my management server. In IT, I put all my policies in place saying you have to have a password, and that's going to be a 4-digit PIN number. If you leave the organization, I'm going to wipe out just the corporate content or maybe the whole thing. But that management agent allows you to do that. It also gives you the capability to whitelisting and blacklisting. So if you don't want Angry Birds 1.6, but you're going to allow Angry Birds 1.8, awesome. I can show you how to do that. Now, if you want all the Angry Birds, we can also push that out to all of your users as well. It's totally up to you. Some smiles, maybe? All right. There's different ways to manage applications, whether you want those applications on there or not. This also gives you the capability to do inventory. So if you have an application that needs to be pushed out to all of your devices, especially in high ed, K-12, so do this a lot for K-12. I don't want all of the 5th grade iPads to look the same. I can make all those 5th grade iPads look the same. Now the next year when we change applications, we move maybe to new PDF files, things like that, I can remove the old stuff and push down the new stuff. That's what management gives me the capability to do. Management also can be a detriment because this is where it comes in looking at your HR and your legal policies. This is where I can say, I don't want you knowing where I am, first of all, because this can collect GPS data. I don't want you knowing my browser history, because this can also look at that. This can be very, very intrusive for people who bring their own device in and don't want IT to have access to that information. Okay? So 2 ways to do things. We can put an agent on it. We can manage the devices that you own, or you can put this workspace on that gives you the capability to segment it off. The next thing is infrastructure. So from an infrastructure standpoint, you're going to find people who all has a guest network in their building that allow? Okay. Do you have employees using the guest network? All right. It may be time to look at a 3rd network. You have your production network, you have your guest network, and then you can have a BYO network. And that can be segmented off just for employees, a little bit higher bandwidth. You can filter it, you can manage it, but then you get your employees off of the lower bandwidth, highly filtered guest network, which then when your guests actually come in to use it, have a hard time using it because they have a hard time getting on. It also gives them a little bit more of a reason to bring their devices in. If you're trying to adopt a BYO policy, one of the big detriments is going to be data usage. If you allow them to have a BYO network on campus or in your buildings, it's going to be a little bit more beneficial for them. They won't feel like they're using their personal data as much, so forth. Okay. We did this at Dell, and we're doing it across all of our campuses, and it's helped to invigorate the BYOD policy. Okay. 3rd area is applications. Who here has written applications or has applications that they're deploying? Okay. Who here is thinking about doing applications? Okay. So from an app standpoint, generally, you're going to see a big push for this. It's probably going to be for you guys maybe 12 to 24 months down the road. There's going to be applications that I would think you may start seeing. The reason is we tend to see people who have an application, and me as an application user, I spend 3 to 4 times longer on that than I do on the website. So people spend apps are much more immersive. You can get a lot more data from people. You can get a lot more understanding of what their needs are, and you can tend to meet those needs pretty easily with applications because you can build it exactly the way you want it. You'll see iOS and Android as being the 2 heavy because they've got 90-something% of the market space. So we're going to see a lot more of that happening. The other thing from an app standpoint, on a fully managed device, if you have a mobile device management, this is where your applications, you have something called an app store. That app store has a list of applications that you'd want your employees to have access to. You can push those applications out to devices that you have that agent sitting on, and then you can have a uniformity across all of your devices. Okay, so this is really beneficial because I can go pick up iPad 1, iPad 10, Dell device 1, Dell device 10, doesn't matter, and I can use it and it's uniform across the whole institution. Last thing is security. Security is a huge thing, and I think this is one of the reasons you guys came. We start generally with a policy to put a PIN or a password on a device. That is the simplest, easiest thing to do, and that's where you apply it generally across the entire organization. So whether it's going to be a workspace, which again is that little application, or whether I'm trying to manage the entire device, I'm going to put a PIN and password first. I'm secondly going to set up policies to push out Wi-Fi. I can then push policies to push out the applications that I want to have on there. I can also set policy to, if there's an application I don't want, and any one time someone tries to download, it'll remove that application. So you have a lot of capabilities when it comes to MDM, and it can go way deeper than that. For instance, if you have, and I've done this for some institutions, they don't want to use they don't want FaceTime available because it's a network bandwidth hog. We can turn that off. They don't want kids taking pictures during class, so we can turn off the camera. They don't want people buying applications on the state's dime, okay? So we can remove the app stores. You have the capability to really make this thing almost exactly the way you want it to be, using a management console and using the security provisions within that to give you really deep capabilities into the devices now. Any questions on that? Yes? You can. Yes, so you can push out credentials, you can push out the SSID, you can also push out the password, because a lot of times I don't want to give it to people. So I can preset all of the Wi-Fi, a whole bunch of them, as many as I want, for users across all campuses. So if I had a lot of different buildings, state of Texas has a lot of different buildings, I can push those out for all those buildings. Then anywhere someone goes with a tablet, a laptop, a phone, they're going to have those Wi-Fi settings preset. Yes?
So one of the biggest challenges is as we develop the applications, iOS is getting upgraded before the applications are ready type thing. Do you ever foresee an application that you have to log into to be able to get the iOS to come down rather than going directly that would limit it type thing?
Limit
Limit their access to, well,
The operating
they'll always
system
have
upgrade?
access, but if they were to go through there, then they would know it's ready type thing. Have that application where they can connect that way to get the iOS versus going directly to Apple type thing.
For the operating system upgrade?
For the operating system upgrades,
Okay.
because see, the
Yeah.
applications are just not ready for the
Right.
iOS when Apple decides the latest and greatest is coming out on Thursday.
Yeah.
And then you start breaking a lot of applications that are already working and you can't backtrack.
Right. So,
So is there a way around that that's coming through the,
yes.
okay, good.
Now, there's caveats to everything. Okay, so this is what ends up happening. You'll find somebody who will go super deep into it, and they'll like try and nail me on every single point. But basically, I know, no, that's okay. So the biggest problem that a lot of people have was the fact that carriers pushed out operating system updates. And so if you're a user and you're sitting there on your phone and you get this new thing, it says, are you ready to upgrade? This is going to be so much fun, upgrade. You hit yes, you do the upgrade, and then none of your apps work that we've pushed out. Okay. Apple has something called Device Enrollment Program, DEP. Anybody here heard of the DEP program? Okay. So Device Enrollment Program is very new. It just came out. Essentially what you end up doing is you buy your devices through Apple. You pre-enroll in the DEP program. They take the device ID or something called the UDID of that device. They put it into the DEP program, and then you're actually, you use an MDM to manage that device. AirWatch, Mobile Iron, Dell, yes. Okay. Once they're in the DEP program, they're always in the DEP program unless you release it. That means if I steal that iPad and I go and I do a reset, it's going to talk back to Apple, talk back to your MDM, push back the policy, and so I can't do anything with it. It also means that you control when the upgrades go to that device. Okay? You cannot enroll devices that you've already purchased in the DEP program. Okay? That's the downside of it. I saw a question from the back. Okay. Sorry. That's an Apple thing. So the DEP program is very, very new. Just came out probably in the last 5 weeks. You're seeing vendors that are trying to add that into their MDM, and that's going to be something that's really important. We're thinking that that's going to be a way to kind of slow down some of these upgrades, fully manage the devices. Again, if a device gets lost or stolen, you control it, even if it gets found, you know, long time later, if it gets stuck in a drawer. Okay. Yes.
I have a question. A lot of people I know in my area, they like the idea of BYOD, and they want to mainly going to use their smartphone for emails to access the emails. And be that is synchronized through Active Directory, their username and password. So if they change it, like, so our policies, I think every 6 months they have to change your username. I'm sorry.
Password. You guys are really nice. 6 months. Most companies are like 30 days. So, but okay.
I used to be one who was over 30 days.
Yes.
Hell.
Yes.
Believe me.
Yes.
And so would this allow it to change the password automatically, or do they have to manually go into the device itself and change it as well?
They still have to go in manually and change the device itself, but it can, there's certain mobile device management platforms which can help with that, but you have to be on the right ones. Yeah, no uniform answer on that one. Right now, the biggest uniform answer is that you have to change your password on the device as well. Okay. Any questions on this stuff? Try to make it pretty straightforward. Okay. Okay, so there are these mobility business models, and within that, on the far left, are the institutionally owned devices where here's your device. On the far right is, I always call this education, it's the Wild Wild West. They bring in what they bring in and they request access. Most models we're seeing are falling somewhere in the middle where they're going to set a minimum standard. So iOS 7, Android 4. So operating system levels. At below that level, we're not going to support you. Above that level, sure, you can bring that device in. The downside that you have when it comes to, so from a mobile device standpoint, it's pretty easy. The downside I have on iOS 8 is that it's 5.8 gigs. It's huge, and so I have a 16 gig iPhone 5S, and it takes up a third. I mean, wow, thank you. So if I'm pushing out a lot of applications to that device, I may fill that up. The nice thing about a mobile device management platform is that it tells you you're about to fill up that space. So you can find out very easily if this group of users or that specific user has enough memory on their device to hold these new applications. But so what we're finding is you're probably going to end up finding models in somewhere in this where you have devices that you're going to give to people. You also have devices that they're going to bring in. Most people set a policy that at a minimum level, I want to be able to do specific things. And that tends to be iOS 7 and Android 4 and above. Okay. So security. You know, if you talk to the heavy-duty security crypto guys, every single person is vulnerable. It doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. You can take your data and bury it in your backyard and not give it any connectivity and literally take the Wi-Fi cards out. I mean, you can do that to kind of protect your data, but literally there's a lot of vulnerability. Depends on how hardcore you go, depending upon what you're looking at. So I tend to say that within this world, we kind of separate things out. And so you have different levels of things. You have to look at the user and look at the applications and what applications and what data you want to give them access to. It's much easier to just say, on that type of device, I don't want to give you access. On this type of device, I do want to give you access. The meaning of that is, on the far left, when I fully control that device, I have antivirus running. I know there's no malware on it. I'm checking to make sure it's not jailbroken or rooted, so you haven't removed the security layer. I really understand that device. On the far right, if I'm bringing in something that I know nothing about, I don't want to trust to put highly sensitive secure data on that device because I just don't know anything about it. So, again, everybody's vulnerable when it comes to, from a security standpoint. We've tried segmenting out data. So from the top, what you're going to find is that's my stuff. I can carry my phone numbers around, things like that. I can have my personal calendar. I can have stuff like that on it. The second area is containerization. The containerization standpoint, what this is data that you feel you want people to have access to, but you want it to be in a secure way. And this is what I was talking about when it comes to the workspace. The workspace is actually just a secure container. The third level that we've done for people is something called virtualization. Anybody running VDI in their facilities? Okay. So from a virtualization standpoint, you've stuck all the data back in the data center. You're not allowing it on the physical laptop or the physical device. They have a window to it, but they're not saving it locally on their device. The fourth area is where I just don't want them to have access to it. They can only have access on-premise on a fully controlled, institutionally owned device. This tends to be more federal, Department of Defense, stuff like that, where they're in that mode of data. All right? Okay. So something called EMM. EMM is Enterprise Mobility Management. So MDM was a very 2010 term. The next generation of MDM is called EMM, Enterprise Mobility Management. EMM pulls in everything. We believe that from one console, you're going to be able to manage PCs, Macs, Linux devices, thin clients, machine-to-machine, smartphones, tablets, smartwatches, essentially everything, Internet of Things, everything that comes in and has an IP address and touches your network. We believe that EMM is the future of where that management is going to sit. So the way I like explaining is I'm going to have a workspace, and that workspace could be a hardened laptop you give to me. It could be a VDI session that you allow me to have. It could be an application that sits on my device, and in that is your encrypted data. It could just be an HTML5 browser. There's a lot of different ways we can present workspaces. But workspaces, or EMM, give you multiple levels of security. They give you encryption in the area that you own. So Dell does not own this device. This is my personal device. But the application that I run on this is an encrypted application that Dell has. If Dell decides to pull that application back, they're only wiping that secure application. We think that is the best way to go, because you're going to find lawsuits when I remotely access. There's two buttons: wipe just the corporate information or state information, wipe all. If I accidentally hit wipe all, I've made somebody's day very bad. Okay? They may not remember their iCloud password, which again is very bad because it's different from their iOS App Store password. And then they can't restore all their stuff, and they have no idea. I remember 2 phone numbers today. Sorry, most people don't remember phone numbers anymore. So you've created a very bad day for somebody. So that's why we think that having that, giving people the capability to have the security but not know it is much easier. Giving them secure remote access where they're going to attach to Wi-Fi hotspots. Most people don't know the difference between a secure Wi-Fi hotspot and non-secure Wi-Fi hotspot. Also, when you go into Starbucks and you look at all the different ones, one of them may be the guy in the back corner on his laptop siphoning all of your data as you go through. That's Starbucks 3. Yes?
Clarify, but by turning on active sync, you have access to the device anyhow, though, don't you?
You have access to the device, but you've not separated out the data. So active sync, yes.
But wouldn't you still have access? I understand the workspace part.
Yes.
And then they have access to that with their management.
Right.
But just by active sync, they still have access to the device to wipe anything, don't they?
If I have, if I'm just running active sync,
Yeah.
I can wipe the full device. Yes,
Right.
yes.
So this wouldn't active sync have to be on with this
No.
EMM
EMM?
solution? No, it doesn't.
It does not.
It goes to this instead.
Yes.
So how do you pull in, so is your EMM security solution tied to your AD?
It is tied to AD. There's multiple ways to do it. I can actually run everything natively through ActiveSync, or I can run everything in the workspace. In both areas, what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a security. I have less security running through Exchange ActiveSync than I do running it through the secure workspace. Okay. From a security standpoint, though, we want to give people secure remote access and have them not have to think about it. So you're going to hear something. You're going to hear a lot more about something called a per-app VPN. A per-app VPN means that that specific application has a VPN connection in. The end user does nothing about it. All they do is they click on the application. The VPN connection is set up, and they're allowed into the intranet. In doing that, it looks to see if the device is jailbroken or rooted. That means, have I removed the security layer? Okay, I'm not going to let you in. It also can look at other things as well, but essentially what it's doing is trying to make that VPN connection in just for that app rather than the whole thing. So if I'm out and about and I join a Wi-Fi hotspot and I need to do something, maybe put in my timesheets or something, I hit my secure app, it does a per-app VPN. It's also going to block me downloading my iTunes through your network. It doesn't want to do that. It's going to go the normal intranet way and block that out. So per-app VPN is a really nice way of going to push out specific apps and make sure that they have the security they need, but it segments again off the data so that you're not having miscellaneous data flow through your network.
So is that like, so that's outside of a workspace, right? It's like it's per app.
It can be within the workspace or outside the workspace. You have 2 ways to do it. So you can assign it to an application specifically that's pushed out by the mobile device management, or you can have it, we have ours built into the workspace. Yeah. DLP, data loss prevention, this is where I'm living in the application and you want to manage me to not be able to drag and drop things outside. manage the fact that I may, you don't want people like siphoning off data. That's what DLP does. Remote wipe, from a remote wipe standpoint, you generally have two options. You can remote wipe just the state information, or you can remote wipe the whole thing. From a policy standpoint, who has identity and access management solution today? Okay, so identity and access management, you're going to hear a lot more about that. Identity and access management works with Active Directory. It looks at who I am, what policy I am, what device I'm coming in on, and then allows me to get application access depending upon the device, the geographic location. You can put as many parameters as you want. Device, geographic location, time of day. Yes, IP address. You can do anything you want when it comes to identity and access management. This is going to be absolutely huge. So in certain situations, I want you to have access to your email. But to get access to HR and be able to look at people's private social security numbers, I don't want you doing unless you're in our facility, on our machine. So you can, all that goes through a policy which looks at all the applications I have access to, all the devices I come in on, the place I come in on, and again, looking at whether that device is safe and secure. Encryption. So encryption is one of those things where, again, the iOS users, if you put a PIN number on your device, it's already encrypted. It does it out of the box. If you're an Android user, it's not encrypted unless you've gone through the encryption process. That's going to change with the new operating system, Android L, but we're not going to see a heavy adoption of Android L until the end of summer next year. Okay? So encryption, what it basically does is you have to have a PIN or password to get to that data. All right? It's really important to have this because if I walk behind you and show a fake badge and get into your building and yank your laptop and keep pushing a button to keep it on so it doesn't time out, I have access to that. I want to make sure that that everything is encrypted and you need to time things out and so forth. Compliance reporting. So from a compliance reporting standpoint, who has access, what type of devices, those types of things, that's really important. And then identity, I mentioned identity and access management earlier. All right? So let me run through Workspace. Let me see how much time I've got. 10:42. Okay. Workspace, and again, I'm going to talk generically about workspaces. There are multiple vendors who have a workspace. All right. I use my icon because I had access to it, so I'm taking from a neutral standpoint. There is this thing called Workspace, which we believe again is going to be kind of where people move things. It's an app downloaded from the App Store. Once I download that app, I use my credentials to log into it. Once I've logged into it, my email, calendar, contacts, and maybe some other information is pushed into that secure container. That secure container has that. You guys push policies on the secure container. You're not pushing it on the whole device. Or in a fully MDM world, you push it on the whole device, but you also push more policies on that app. So the benefit in a BYOD world, if this is a tablet, my kids are watching streaming movies, watching YouTube, whatever, they put the device down, I don't have to have a password on the whole device. I only have a password on my app. Okay? There's some nice benefits there because a lot of times we had kids would keep pushing buttons thinking that was the password and they'd lock up the device. All right, so there's some nice benefits here. All the security, encryption, everything's built into it. It's obviously available. You can get it on smartphones, you can get it on tablets, so this is just some views of what that looks like. From a sharing standpoint, we see the other thing that's really going to happen a lot from a collaboration standpoint is you owning or managing storage. So this can be cloud storage, it can be something on-prem, but managing and owning that and giving people the capability to access that from their secure folder is really important. This gives them a place to store things. If the device is lost or stolen, they've got a backup of it. If they change devices, which happens very often these days, you can go and all you do is log back in and all your data is reconnected up with that application. We think also from a help desk standpoint, having an application that looks similar across almost all of your platforms makes it very easy for you to support. So I don't really, in the old days, I always have to ask people what device they're on because their settings may look different, their tools look different, the app icons look different. Go to the one app icon that says work, click on that. Okay, now what's going on that we can fix for you today? So you can make it. Yes, you can set policies around syncing. So this is going to allow you to just sync during the day or not at night. You can even do it from a standpoint of, for contractors, I'm going to turn it on at 8, I'm going to turn it off at 6. So desktop workspace. Desktop workspace is something that I think is very small. We've talked to 6 have done this today, but it's really going to grow. We're looking at a 42% adoption rate by 2018. Desktop workspace is essentially me being able to bring in my own PC, Mac, or even Linux device into an environment, and then you actually put an image on that device in a secure container. Okay, so the benefit to that is, as a software developer, I don't have to carry 2 machines. I can just carry my 1 machine. As a contractor, I can walk into an environment with my device. You give me the image. I just download and run that image in that secure container, and then all the policies and everything you put on that. I still have access to all my tools, but I cannot drag and drop your data out of the container and onto my desktop. If I've got people who are working from home, because we're going to see more of a flex work environment, I can give them a corporate image on their machine. Okay? Some really nice features to this. Yes, sir? No, what we do is we share it across to shared storage. So if they create a software app, we do it on shared storage, and then they can pull it in the other way. But IT then flags it, is able to see what's going on, make sure there's no malware, viruses, things like that. Okay. So the benefit here is we're giving people the capability, and we want to have uniformity across a PC, a Mac, a tablet, a smartphone, so that you have something called data leakage prevention, again, that DLP. You have encryption across all the devices. You have secure remote access to make it much easier, again, where people don't have to think about the security when they're out at Wi-Fi hotspots, and firewall access as well. Okay? All right. Let me show you what that looks like. This is I have a BYO PC. My personal PC is what I use for work. So on that BYO PC, I have an application. I click on the application. I enter my Exchange credentials. And then what I have is 2 laptops in one. On the left-hand side is all my personal stuff. On the right-hand side is all of my work stuff. Again, the benefit to this, and there's multiple ways to do this, okay? You can have it where I have to be online the whole time. That's more of a VDI thing where I'm running all the data back in the data center. And my desktop that you're serving up to me is essentially running on a computer in a data center remotely, and you're giving me basically a window to that world. This is another way of doing it where instead of running it all in a data center, I'm using the local resources of the local PC or the local Mac to run everything. I now have offline access. I get on a plane, there's no Wi-Fi, or I don't want to pay for it, and I need to return emails. Great, I can open up my workspace and do all the work I need to do. I run out to meet with a constituent somewhere, and I need to take a survey, but I want my access on my personal machine. This is a great way of doing that, because now they can have all the forms they have secured in this container. So what you see on that container on the right-hand side, that's where I'm pushing all my policies. I'm forcing that one to have a password. I'm allowing or not allowing that one to have access to the DVD drive, the CD-ROM, the USB drives. I can even remove access to USB. I can also say that if I was to move from this laptop to another, the only way to move my secure container is through an encrypted swap, or I'm not allowed to do it, and I have to talk to IT to get help to do it. The other thing we put on here is we put on the mobile, and we put on this one something called a time bomb. So if I don't check in within a certain period of time, 30, 60, 90 days, a year, I want that stuff to go away. I want all the data to disappear. So we think long-term this is really a nice way of doing things, because again, people have machines, they want to bring these machines in. This gives them an alternative way of doing computing. So they can live in the environment that they like living in. They can also use the tools they like using, but we can segment off that data so it keeps it personal and private. Okay. So you'll see I have access on my HR on the right-hand side where I can go do all my benefit-y stuff, and then on the left-hand side I'm reading my Gmail. So, okay. Yes, sir?
So the secure side has access to the data, but if the tools are, you're saying they can use the tools that they are comfortable with, but those wouldn't be able to have access to the data on the secure side, right?
Unless you allow it. So you can allow and disallow certain pieces and disallow other pieces that may not be a part of it. So what we're seeing a lot of people do on the software development side is they're developing applications on a Mac or in Linux. They're not going to have a Windows image where all their Windows apps are. So we're giving them that Windows image where all their Windows apps are, but they're going to use the tools on the left-hand side to create their applications or do other things that they're going to do. It's not a perfect scenario, but it gives them more access than they've had in the past, and I won't have to deploy a laptop to the users. I even have access to send them a USB stick with the full image. This full image, I can ship that to them, an encrypted USB stick. They can load it in 10 minutes. They have their corporate image or their state image up and running on their personal machine.
If you have an iOS device, any way of getting the Windows?
No, not yet. Yeah. The only way, so that if you have an iOS device and you need to run Windows, you'd have to use a VDI solution where you're running everything in the data center and you're having access that way. There's nothing you can run locally yet. Yeah. Not enough power. Yes, sir.
Your devil's advocate, because I know this will come up, but if you present this, especially in the state agency, this is great when they're away from the office and monitor work.
Yes. Yeah.
They're at their desk and they have their personal email, music player, that kind of stuff. And they're now on our network.
Yep.
Doing browsing and things like that.
Right.
You can't control that, right?
You can. You can actually force it into full window so it only has the state image up, and you can't do, you basically won't be able to see anything otherwise. Once you log in, you can use it as a time card, so it means that they've logged in and they've logged off, so you can do it that way. From the big VDI world, this is a small piece of the puzzle. Yeah. Okay. Other questions?
Just to let you know, you guys may or may not know this, they are videotaping all of the sessions today, so if you go to the Public Sector Partners website, you'll be able to see Jason's spiel again, or if you want to contact him directly, it's Jason _Moody, MOODY, @Dell.com. Or he'll be at the desk. All day. Any other questions? I think you have 10 seconds.
Thank you guys very much for listening and for the questions. Thank you.